What's up, guys? Tide Super Clean here, and welcome to the very first episode of watching DJ tutorials. So this is going to be a new series for me. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be watching other DJs tutorials for beginners and advanced students. And so for the very first video, I decided to pick a very well-known EDM superstar. Her name is Alison Wonderland, really great producer and DJ. And I have not watched this video yet, so everything is going to be basically my first reaction to it. But a little bit about me. I'm not any well-known superstar DJ or anything like that, but I have been a DJ in the dance music scene for 20 years. So my experience comes in the form of playing a bunch of local events here in Hawaii, some in California. I had a residency in the Philippines in Manila for a while, and I started off with vinyl records, just like all the other DJs that started back in the 90s, 2000s, before MP3s became a really popular way of DJing. Worked my way up, saved up money, sold equipment to buy new equipment. Right now, my setup is basically, if you can see it right over here, it's the Denon Prime 4, and I also have turntables. I still gotta have those. I have a bunch of records that I don't ever want to sell, and I enjoy playing vinyl every so often. But alas, let's go ahead and start the episode.
Hey, I'm Alison Wonderland, and I'm going to teach
Hi.
you guys how to DJ. I'm going to teach you the very basics. I'm going to strip it back. Disclaimer, this is not the be-all and end-all of DJing. There are different techniques. I'm just going to teach you my technique. So first of all, we have two decks right now. They're called CDJs. Another option you can use is vinyl, but I play on CDJs. And it's just the digital version of vinyl. Then we have the mixer. Now, the mixer is what outputs the audio from the CDJs and the decks to the speakers. These are all connected, and this is connected to the speakers. A really good analogy for two decks and a speaker is, say you're playing Xbox or PlayStation, the decks are the two controllers or the controller, and then this is the actual console. The mixer would be the console, and then the TV would be the speakers. The equipment we're using today.
If you want to be technical, the speakers on the TV would be the speakers, but I like her analogy a lot. Makes it really easy to understand for beginners. Um, Technically, with CDJs, if you were to connect it to a laptop, you could use the CDJs as a controller to control visuals to do video mixing. I believe Pioneer even created um, DJ controllers specifically to control visuals. I forgot offhand what the model number is. If I find out, I'll put it down in a link below.
Is the Pioneer CDJ 2000, Nexus 2, and the Pioneer DJM 900, which is a very standard club standard and festival standard setup. These are what you will most likely see 90% of the time. So I'm going to turn on the
That is
decks,
true.
and I'm going to show you guys what everything does. I'm going to skip the really detailed stuff because we are sticking to the basics today. So I'm just going to show you the really simple buttons and what settings I play in and why. Now, let's play a track.
So that's really cool that she's showing the way that she sets it up. And um, not a lot of DJs always use the same setup. When I started learning how to DJ, I had a different mixer, and there was no real club standard back then for DJ mixers and DJ equipment. You were lucky to be able to get something like the Pioneer 600 or 500 in a set, just because at the time, that was like the high quality mixer. Um, Most of the time, most events, because everybody played vinyl, you would have Technique 1200s. If you were lucky, you would get the higher model numbers. But usually, most of the time, it was just the Techniques, MK2s. You would have to bring your own needles, which was kind of a pain because, you know, having extra equipment that could break easily is always kind of just really something that you had to be careful of whenever you were a traveling DJ. It wasn't always easy to just buy equipment right away. You didn't have a flash drive. Um, and so, headphones, there wasn't a lot of different variety of headphones. Everybody either had the Sonys or I don't even know what the other brands were back then because I always had Sonys. So let's go ahead and check out more of this.
We're just going to focus on one CDJ for now so that you can be familiar with what it does. Also, I will add that I do play in, there's a thing called the jog mode button, and I play in vinyl mode. There's also a CDJ mode. Vinyl mode, it has been designed to kind of replicate playing on vinyl decks, so you can scratch with it, and it just has slightly different features to the CDJ one, but I've always stuck to vinyl and I will continue to use it. I'm just going into my royalty-free folder.
So the difference between, excuse me, vinyl mode and CDJ mode is, like she mentioned, vinyl mode, you can actually scratch the platter so it emulates scratching on a vinyl record. CDJ mode, basically the early models of CDJs, you couldn't do that. You could use the jog wheel to try to correct the beat matching by pushing or pulling back the platter. But other than that, there wasn't really a huge difference. A lot of the earlier models of CDJs too were kind of wonky in that um, basically when you hit the Q button, it had like this stutter effect. I didn't use CDJs too much back then, but there was a stutter effect, and it made it really, really hard to kind of like try to beat match on time when you're trying to cue. So let's go ahead and continue.
So that we don't have this these lessons taken down, and I'm gonna go with uplifting hip hop right now because why not? We all need a bit
What
of
is up with
uplifting.
the shirt? That's funny. I like that.
So this is the play button and the pause button. Play, pause,
Pretty
play,
self-explanatory.
pause. So now we know what the play button does. So that's how you actually start a track. Another way to start a track is the cue button. Now the cue button is a really important button to me. I love DJing with it and using it for different creative things. And it's a simple way to be creative with different tracks and layering without using the more advanced techniques. A cue button also plays the track. Every time you lift off the cue button, it's actually going to stop the music. So what you want to do is do this. Oops, sorry, I fucked that up. What you want to do is this. And see, as I was holding down the cue button, I actually pressed the play button, and it'll keep playing. So I'm going to move on now to.
Okay, so what she was doing, it didn't really, you couldn't hear it in the video that was on the side, but basically what she was doing was a form of cue scratching, which is kind of like a style of scratching where you basically hold the cue button and then you push the platter forward and it makes kind of like a scratch sound. Um, so that's one technique of using the cue button. And most DJs nowadays use the cue button to kind of just time their beat matching on cue. Um, when I was still learning how to use CDJs, I would just press the play button because I was so used to using a record where you would just press play, spin back the vinyl record, and then just kind of scratch cue it in place, time it on beat. But it's basically the same thing as pressing the cue button.
Master tempo. The master tempo button is also a really important one for me. I play in a mode where I keep the master tempo light on. Now every track, just as a side note, has a different BPM, which means beats per minute. So, some tracks are made slower than others and some tracks are made faster, kind of like a heartbeat, exactly like a heartbeat. Now the master tempo staying on means that when you slow a track down and you speed it up, it actually won't change the pitch. If you listen to an old vinyl player or use an old vinyl player and you do speed it up or slow it down, you do notice that it sounds really low or really high if it's slower or faster. And also if you are doing a song which is in the same key, it's going to become out of key. And it's not going to sound it's not going to really flow as well. So let's put the master tempo on and keep playing the song, and I'll adjust the speed, and you will notice me adjusting the speed way less, which is going to make it easier for you to mix different genres and different tracks together way more smoothly. So, way more smoothly. I'm really sorry, guys. I cannot speak sometimes, especially when I'm talking about DJing, because I have so many thoughts because I love it so much. And
Hey, big news! You're about to discover how I sold 131,404.
That's all I think about. So we're slowing it down. Speeding it up. Now let's just quickly move on to the mixer.
So to kind of elaborate on that, basically what she was saying was that the master tempo will not change the pitch or the key of the melodies or the samples in the song. So when you pitch up a song, it'll still keep that same vocal or sample at the same key or pitch. Um, there are some genres where it doesn't really matter, like happy hardcore, it sounds actually better the more high pitched, in my opinion, the vocals are. I know a lot of, from what I read, you can quote me on this, but a lot of hip hop DJs don't really care too much about using master tempo because they do a lot of fast mixing, and I might be wrong on that, but I vaguely remember reading something about that. So now she's going to talk about the mixer.
You can understand simply what it does. This is called the booth monitor knob, and what that does, it will adjust the booth monitor. The booth monitor is the speaker that is next to your ear while you play, because all the speakers that are getting played out in the crowd are not facing you, and as we know with sound, it travels really strangely and it will bounce off things and you will not be able to hear the track properly when it's getting played out loud. So this is immediate and right next to you and you'll be able to hear it. This will just adjust the volume. I actually like to do my mixes using the booth monitor. So if you have seen me DJ before, you'll notice that my headphones are usually just around my neck while I'm actually doing a mix, because I'm listening to the booth monitor. These cue buttons are allowing you to mix things in using your headphones because you can have the volume all the way down.
So the thing about a booth monitor, blah, 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 blah. The thing about a booth monitor is that it's very important to have it placed properly. Um, a lot of DJ mixers back in the day didn't have dual queuing, where you can hear both tracks at the same time in your ear. So what you would have to do is the song playing that you're trying to mix into will be in one ear, and then the other ear you're going to be listening to that booth monitor, and you're going to be trying to beat match that way. And what's really tough about that is if that monitor is not placed correctly, if it's too far from you, if it's too low, too high, you're gonna get kind of a delay when you're trying to beat match. And I always hated trying to beat match using booth monitors. I mean, I can do it, but nowadays I just use dual queuing just because it's so much easier. And it's the same kind of argument as using sync or using MP3s versus vinyl records. I remember reading on forums a long time ago about how people and DJs were so mad about that, but you know, things change, technology advances.
Down and put this cue button on like this, and you'll be able to hear the music only through your headphones. So while there's a track playing out loud to the crowd, you're able to hear what you're doing in the other one.
Love the graphics in this. Very well done video.
There's 4 channels on this mixer, which means that you can potentially have 4 different decks lined up to this mixer, but today we're just using 2. Now, the different channels means each represents each deck. To find out what channel your deck is going through, the best thing to do is to queue up a track, either press the cue button, which will play the sound, or the play button, which will play the sound, and you will see that channel 1 is lighting up, which means that your track is going through channel 1, and that's the channel you need to focus on in order to bring up the sound and create things with it. So in order to make the music that you've got queued up on this deck be heard out loud to the crowd, you have to always move the volume up like this. The cue button, which I earlier said.
You could also use the gains. A lot of DJs used to do that, especially on old mixers back in the 80s and 90s. But most DJs nowadays use the volume faders. You could also use the Q, which I'm pretty sure she's going to be using. Not the Q, excuse me, the channel fader, the crossfader. That's what I meant to say, crossfader. And you could use that in conjunction with the volume, but that's a totally different technique, saved for another day.
It was one of my favorite buttons because you can be really creative with, is almost used as a sort of bookmark in between the track. So you can actually change the part of the track that you want to press play on and have it start by queuing it up. Queuing it up means that you press play. And then you pause it where you want to start, where you want to place the bookmark, as in press the Q button and mark a different area of the track that you want to start the track at. So I'm starting it
Pretty
at when the
self-explanatory.
drums come in on the 1 beat. So we're going to go from the start. I'm going to count with you because everything in most tracks, unless you're very avant-garde and really interesting, you'll be counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you always want to cue up on the 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now the drums come in. 1. Okay. Now I pressed pause a little bit after when the first kick drum sound came in. So this is where my other favorite thing on the decks, which is called the jog wheel, comes in. Now, the jog wheel is this thing. It's the thing that looks like the vinyl, and you can use it to reach a point that you may have just missed when you press pause, and it actually zooms in and kind of micro finds things for you. So can you hear where there's that louder kind of like punch in the sound? If you want to cue the track up just like a millisecond before the hardest part of that punch comes in. Okay, I can hear it. Now to me, that still sounds a little bit early, so I want to go press play really, and then like move it one little thing over. And now the track's going to start from where the drums come in. There are 2 settings on this CDJ that are kind of controversial. I do not use them.
So just to elaborate, when she was doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, my personal technique for counting beats and measures is to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, and then to the next part 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. It just helps a lot when you're counting measures and beats in your head. I'm not really going to go into detail about that right now because it's a whole different lesson, and this is about Alison's lesson.
To play my tracks, I actually manually do everything, but a lot of people use the sync button. The sync button means that it is going to match the beat of the track that's playing out loud already. So it's way less work. I don't necessarily use it for myself. I'm not going to be closed-minded or, tell anyone it's wrong, but I just personally find it more fun to treat this like an instrument. And then the quantize button, which I'm turning on right now so you can see it. I'm turning it off again. I do not use this because I just prefer to still have a slightly organic feel to my DJing, even though I am on decks. Quantize it button, what it will do is it'll always make sure that you press play on the beat. Not necessarily that hard to do without the button. So I don't think you guys need it. Okay, so essentially I've told you what the decks do, and I've given you a little bit of a lesson on.
So the thing about quantize is with sync, I used to be in the whole camp of like, oh, sync, you shouldn't use sync. But nowadays I've kind of chilled out on that. Like, if you want to use sync, go ahead. Personally, though, in my opinion, you shouldn't really have to use sync because DJ equipment is so precise nowadays that all you have to do is just line up the BPM numbers to the exact T of the other song, and you're set. And that takes like literally 2 seconds. But, if people want to use sync, people want to use sync. Quantize, I feel, is a little bit more important to have on because when you're doing things such as cue drumming, where you're using the hot cues to drum different parts of the song, it's really important and it really helps you to be able to do everything on time. I don't think it's really considered cheating so much. It's a good tool, in my opinion.
On very, very basics of a mixer. What we're going to do in the next lesson is learn how to beat match, I'll be back next week.
Nice.
I'm Alison Wonderland. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, this is the very basics of DJing. So all you DJ snobs, shh, right now. This is for anyone that's never DJed before. Again, my technique is not the be-all and end-all of how to DJ, but I'm just showing you what I've learned and the technique that I use. This is the industry standard. And don't forget to stay open-minded, stay creative, play the music that you love, and experiment and take risks. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.
That was a very, very good beginner tutorial. She really covered over the basics, and it wasn't really anything too in-depth, but as a DJ, you should be learning how to connect everything yourself. You should be reading the instruction manual to know what each feature does. And there's tons and tons and tons of YouTube tutorials that cover all the really, really in-depth stuff. That was a very good first episode. She really covered a lot of the things I feel that would be really helpful for beginner DJs that are just kind of trying to get their feet wet into learning what all the features and what all the things do, because I can imagine looking at this equipment, seeing this giant circle thing and not knowing what to do with it, all the different buttons. So yeah, Allison, very good first episode. I can't wait to see the next one. Can't wait to see you know, your thought process and to beat matching and such. So very, very good. 2 thumbs up. Alright guys, thanks for watching. This was the very first episode of my series. For the next one, I might either watch Allison's next one, which is in 2 weeks. You can check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/TideSuperClean. Check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/superclean. You can also follow me on my Instagram, instagram.com/super.clean. Have a good one, guys. Take care. Aloha.